Hello, I'm Esther Githuyu. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. A dozen African countries were among those holding presidential, parliamentary or local elections this year. We'll take an in-depth look at how democracy fared on the continent. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump says the leaders of Ukraine and Russia should be prepared to make a deal to end the war. And innovative solutions emerge in Ghana to empower the next generation of vocational skills and new career opportunities. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We'll have those stories in a moment, but first, Mozambique's top court on Monday confirmed the October election victory of the ruling Frelimo party. The Frelimo party's win triggered massive protest by opposition groups who say the vote was rigged. The Constitutional Council has the final say over the electoral process, and its ruling may spark further protests in Mozambique, a southern African country with nearly 35 million people, which Frelimo has governed since 1975. Provisional results from Electoral Commission, which has not commented on allegations of fraud, showed Frelimo's Daniel Chapo won the presidency by a landslide, while the party increased its majority in parliament. France is marking a day of mourning Monday for victims of Cyclone Chido, which devastated its poorest territory, Mayotte, over a week ago. The cyclone is the most destructive to hit Mayotte in 90 years and caused extensive damage to the island off Africa's east coast. Mozambique's death toll from Cyclone Chido has risen to at least 120 people, according to the AFP news agency. As it rampaged through the Indian Ocean last week, the cyclone had made landfall in northern Mozambique a week ago. The Indian Ocean archipelago Mayotte bore the brunt of the storm. Officials in Mayotte, which is one of France's poorest overseas territories, have only been able to confirm 35 fatalities from Chido, but some say they fear that thousands may be dead from Chido. More than a dozen countries across Africa in 2024 were among those holding presidential, parliamentary or local elections. While some long-term dominant ruling parties retained power in parts of Africa, incumbents suffered crushing defeats in others. VOA Nairobi Bureau Chief Mariama Diallo, who covered a number of elections, looks into how democracy fared this year on the continent.
Some of the election results this year in Africa were expected, and others were surprising. In Senegal, for example, election uncertainty turned into a historic accomplishment as opposition leader Bassirou Diomaye Faye was elected, and at 44 years old, he became Africa's youngest president. His election victory came after a failed attempt by outgoing President Macky Sall to postpone the election process, creating a brief political crisis in the country.
It was really interesting, a very educative scenario for people who are learning democracy.
In Ghana, after serving only one term about a decade ago, John Mahama made a stunning comeback in 2024 and beat the country's vice president and ruling party candidate.
This mandate represents many things.
Analysts, including Kwame Asa-Asante, told VOA that many voters in Ghana were thinking about the economy and their families' financial situations when they cast their ballots.
Because it's a bread and butter issue. Anytime, we've seen time and again that anytime you have a very difficult economy, campaigns become difficult for the government of the day.
Mahama vows to improve an economy which is slowly recovering from a $30 billion external debt default in 2022.
I, Juma Gideon Boko, do swear.
Botswana ushered in a new era by electing a leader from the opposition for the first time in nearly 60 years, following decades of rule by one party. Unlike Botswana, Mozambique's Frelimo party won again after nearly 50 years in power. Results were immediately rejected by opposition leader Venancio Mondlane, who came in second place, triggering violent protest in the southern African country. American University's Kweku Nwauma hopes Frelimo's Daniel Chapo can extend an olive branch to the opposition to avoid a prolonged conflict in Mozambique.
When you win, you have a responsibility to unite the country. And so hopefully he's able to do that. We don't need another African country going down in flames.
Similarly, Namibia's ruling party SWAPO retained power after many decades of governance, but made history by electing its first female president, Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah. Her main challenger, however, called the elections deeply flawed after multiple examples of election day technical difficulties and ballot paper shortages were documented. In Rwanda, longtime leader Paul Kagame won almost 100% of the vote, a suspicious landslide victory, according to some analysts.
If you have a vote where 98% of the population vote for one candidate, that is a red flag.
While Kagame's critics say he has overstayed his place in power, others say he's done a lot for the country.
The achievement is tangible. You can see it.
In South Africa, the African National Congress, in power for 30 years, failed to win the election with an outright majority, forcing it for the first time to form a coalition government. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Nairobi.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is threatening to reassert U.S. control of the Panama Canal. Trump issued the warning during a rally before a group of conservative activists in Phoenix, Arizona, his first since his decisive victory in the November 5th presidential election. He accused Panama of charging excessive rates to use the Central American Passage, which allows ships to cross between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. The president-elect also says he will not let the canal fall into the wrong hands, warning of potential Chinese influence on the passage.
It was not given for the benefit of others by a token of cooperation, but it was given to Panama and to the people of Panama, but it has provisions. You got to treat us fairly, and they haven't treated us fairly. If the principles, both moral and legal, of this magnanimous gesture of giving are not followed, then we will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to the United States of America in full, quickly, and without question.
Trump's comments came hours after he leveled a similar threat against Panama in a post on social media website Truth Social Saturday night. A short time after Trump's speech, a Panamanian President Jose Raul Molino released a video in which he flatly rejected the U.S. leader's demands. The United States
meter of the Panama Canal and its surroundings belongs to Panama and will continue to belong to Panama. The sovereignty and independence of our country are non-negotiable.
The United States built the Panama Canal in the early 1900s as it looked for ways to facilitate the transit of commercial and military vessels between the coasts. Washington relinquished control of the waterway to Panama on December 31st, 1999, under a treaty signed in 1977 under then-President Jimmy Carter. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump says the leaders of Ukraine and Russia should, quote, be prepared to make a deal to end the brutal conflict that has consumed Ukraine since 2022. He also slammed President Joe Biden's decision to allow Ukraine to strike inside Russian territory with U.S.-provided weapons, hinting that when he takes office, he may reverse that move. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Washington.
More difficult is going to be the Russia-Ukraine situation.
President-elect Donald Trump says he'll try for a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine at the start of his next presidential term, and said both sides may have to compromise.
Got to be a deal. No, got to be a deal. Too many people being killed. That is a war that's too many people. Got to make a deal. And Putin has to make a deal too.
He also called President Joe Biden's decision to let Ukraine lob long-range weapons into Russia stupid and a big mistake. The next day, Kyiv took the fight to the heart of Moscow, with Ukrainian security forces claiming responsibility for the brazen assassination of a key Russian general by a bomb hidden in a scooter and detonated just kilometers from Red Square. Analyst William Pomerantz said a future Trump decision to roll back support would have significant military consequence for Ukraine. and could pit Trump against U.S. allies.
I see a potential clash between our NATO allies and President Trump as to what is the future of the war. And quite frankly, when Trump talks about negotiations, it really means that Ukraine has to negotiate and surrender, as it were, but he doesn't really put any conditions on Russia.
The departing Biden administration is trying to spend every penny of available Ukraine security assistance before he leaves office. A National Security Council official explained why to VOA.
Ukraine is about the fundamental basis within the international system upon which everything else rests. That's sovereignty, it's territorial integrity, it's the inviolability of borders. If you don't protect that in Ukraine, you don't protect it anywhere.
Congress ultimately decides whether to keep money flowing into Ukraine's fight. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson to VOA.
I think that President Trump's election has already changed the equation there. I think he's the one that can bring that to a resolution, and we're looking forward to his leadership on that point. So we'll have to see.
Houston Democrat Erica Lee Carter, recently elected to serve the last few weeks of her late mother's congressional term, used her limited time in office to echo her mother's support for Ukraine.
I'm not counting out Ukraine until everyone in Ukraine stops fighting, and I don't see that happening until they win the victory.
Her observation highlights a significant issue, whether Ukraine is even ready to settle. Members of President Volodymyr Zelensky's government recently made the rounds, seeking support from neighbors such as Poland and from as far afield as France and Australia. When asked recently if he was ready to down arms and come to the negotiating table, Zelensky said he first needed to see security guarantees and a plan for peace. Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
Innovative solutions are emerging among Ghana's youth to empower the next generation. One such initiative is the Africa Center for Technical Training, founded by Penelope Brooks Thompson and driven by the dedication of leaders like Monisia Boyen. This center offers technical and vocational skills training to individuals from diverse backgrounds. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
We enroll and admit a diverse cohort of trainees. So you have those with bachelor degree holders who sort of are unable to access white-collar jobs, or they have white-collar jobs and are seeking to earn a second source of income. So this is an opportunity for them to learn a new skill, build multiple sources of income. Now for graduates, high school graduate, junior high school graduate with zero background who came in and probably do not have a clear career path of what they want to. This is an opportunity to test if you find interest in the plumbing career, and we have a facilitation room where our plumbing trainees have their theoretical studies, and when it's time for practicals they come in here, and then they have access to all the plumbing, a lot of plumbing technologies and accessories where they get to practice and work on to really enhance their skills.
Just curious, this is a very male-dominated field.
Yeah.
I see women running this space. To tell you the dynamics.
I think women are naturally empathetic, and so leadership comes to us naturally. And so when you see a problem, you are more drawn to really solve it. And that is what really drives us to create more impact for young people out there, recognizing the high room of unemployment in the country.
At ACTT, we're basically leveraging technology to equip and empower certified artisans across the continent, starting in Ghana. And one thing that's also very important to us is to provide alternative pathways for young people to succeed beyond, your typical university degree. This is the woodwork and joinery workshop. Typically, I'll take you around. So the lockers, our maximum class size is 20. Programs have really grown. We just received our accreditation from the national regulator in Ghana, which is CTVET, Commission for TVET, to run plumbing and gas technology, which is anywhere between a 12 to 18-month program for the award of a national certificate. So we're really excited about that. And we have the woodwork and joinery program, very, very fun and exciting program, also for 7 months. And then we have a DIY program. People who don't necessarily want to commit to a full course, they can come in for about 6 days and they learn to make very exciting products, collapsible desks, laptop stands, etc.
How are you able to come up with these young people who are interested in doing this?
We mostly try to find people who are heavily motivated because at our stage there's not much funding to do the work that we're doing. So people who are young, very driven, heavily motivated to solve our problems so that as we grow, we all, benefit together.
Talk to me about the graduation. So you just said that you are having a class graduating within a few days. Can you tell me about that graduating class?
So the graduating class, I think we've graduated the first cohort in June, and we thought that was like an exceptional class. No, these classes that are graduating next, brilliant.
Since I came to this institution, I have really learned a lot, and it has really helped me, and I believe that what I learned here is going to, help me to achieve greater success in my life.
A key one that I'm really excited about is a gentleman who was hawking ice cream. He used to sell like the local ice cream in Ghana on the streets, and now he's the head plumber of an eco-resort. You would actually see him in the front of the school. Our billboard, his pictures on there, and that's just brilliant.
So you're changing lives.
We are.
Having a huge impact right here.
We are.
That was Penelope Brooke Thompson speaking to VOA's Pondiho in Accra, Ghana. Very inspiring. Let us know what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, a new project tells the story of the U.S. Transcontinental Railroad. We'll be right back.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we'll take a look at how tech startups are using artificial intelligence.
So the AI, you could use it both ways, in two different ways. One is to use it as it is, or you could train it.
Creating content has become so easy.
We talk a lot about responsible AI, and we attribute that to the large tech companies, but it's also up to us as AI practitioners, the smaller companies that are leveraging AI, to think about how we can use it responsibly.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain, and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, French President Emmanuel Macron says his country supports Ethiopia's quest for access to the sea through discussion and respecting international laws in neighboring countries. During a news conference in Addis Ababa on Saturday, Macron welcomed the Ankara declaration reached by Ethiopia and Somalia on December 11th and brokered by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Stampedes during 3 Christmas charity events across Nigeria have left at least 67 people dead in the past week, many of them children. At least 35 children were killed in southwestern Oyo State Wednesday. On Saturday, 22 people died in southeastern Anambra State, while 10 died in Abuja. Due to record high inflation, many people are risking their lives for holiday donations. And with a perfect pirouette, dozens of young ballet dancers gracefully moved between the makeshift iron houses of one of Africa's largest informal settlements, spreading Christmas spirit. Hundreds of residents in Kenya's Nairobi cheered as the nimble ballerinas wearing Santa hats and sparkling outfits turned the dusty narrow roads on the neighborhood of Kibera into a dance-worthy stage on Saturday. The incoming administration of President-elect Donald Trump inherits efforts by the U.S. space agency NASA to return astronauts to the surface of the moon and is turning to commercial space entrepreneurs to help. VOA's Ken Faribault has the details.
But first, At a recent press conference on plans by NASA to return astronauts to the surface of the moon, Administrator Bill Nelson pointed out the U.S. space agency was not the sole partner in the Artemis program.
It's a commercial partnership. It's an international partnership.
More than 50 countries are signatories to the Artemis Accords, which NASA says is a common set of principles to enhance the civil exploration and use of outer space. China, now the main competitor to NASA and its international partners, is not a signatory and plans to land its own crew on the moon by 2030. NASA wants to get there before China, using technology created by commercial space companies to accomplish the goal.
We're going to have SpaceX flying the lander on the Artemis 3. Artemis 4 is going to be SpaceX, and Artemis 5 is going to be Blue Origin.
But the next mission is not until 2026, when Artemis 2 will send a crew to orbit but not land on the moon. Astronaut Reed Wiseman is the mission commander.
But we talk about what is success for us, and it is enabling Artemis 3.
NASA wants to land near the lunar South Pole to search for ice and water during Artemis 3, scheduled for 2027. Nelson says SpaceX founder Elon Musk's experience testing rockets and spacecraft could help Artemis.
Take over, Elon, just take over.
So could his relationship with President-elect Donald Trump.
I think that the relationship is going to be a benefit to making sure that the funding for NASA is there.
I'm with Elon Musk. I think we should set our sights further away. We should go to Mars.
Charles Camarda is a retired NASA astronaut and engineer.
And we should only use the moon to advance the technologies for going to Mars.
In 2005, Camarda was on the crew of the first space shuttle mission after the 2003 Columbia disaster, when the orbiter broke up as it re-entered Earth's atmosphere. All 7 crew members died. He's concerned about problems with the Orion capsule's heat shield during re-entry in the unmanned 2022 Artemis 1 mission. NASA believes it has fixed the issue and plans to use the Orion capsule to transport astronauts to the moon.
I think this could be the tipping point, and we might move in the right direction, or it might be the end of NASA.
NASA's deputy administrator, former astronaut Pam Melroy, told reporters that making decisions about Artemis before the new administration takes over is important to keep NASA on a timeline to return to the moon before China.
I think that would actually be far worse to defer it.
President-elect Trump announced on social media plans to appoint wealthy entrepreneur and pilot Jared Isaacman to replace Nelson as NASA administrator. Isaacman flew in 2021 and 2024 on SpaceX Dragon capsules around the Earth and is the first commercial astronaut to conduct an activity outside a spacecraft. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Chicago.
Rhiannon Giddens is a Grammy and Pulitzer-winning musical artist whose latest project tells the story of the U.S. Transcontinental Railroad, a story told through the eyes of its builders, including African-American, Chinese, Japanese, Irish, and Native American workers. It's called American Railroad, and Nina Vishneva has the story, narrated by Anna Rice.
American Railroad is a musical history of the construction of the transcontinental railway network, but it's seen through the eyes of those who actually built it. Immigrants from Ireland, Italy, Japan, China, as well as former African American slaves and Native American peoples.
You name it, people who were not considered of worth in our society.
The project, which includes an album as well as a tour with a film and lectures, was put together by Rhiannon Giddens, who calls herself a very American artist that's very rooted in history. She's spent most of her artistic career highlighting the role of Black musicians in the bluegrass, country, and folk genres.
They were the ones who built that incredibly, economically important and technologically important thing that, kind of transformed our histories.
Here at the local steel plant in Scranton, Pennsylvania, immigrant workers made the American rails, which replaced expensive imported British ones, and helped the U.S. rail industry take off. Steam locomotives are still restored and fixed at the local depot. These days, they transport tourists, but in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the Pennsylvania Railroad was the largest corporation in the world, says Tim O'Malley from the National Park Service.
In the early 1900s, the story of, or the culture of railroading was the culture of the United States. They were so dependent upon one another.
But it was a business that Giddens says rests on the bones of immigrant workers. With American Railroad, she took songs written by slaves who built the railway through North Carolina, Giddens' home state. And her hope is that the project continues to tell a unifying element of America's story through the eyes of the people who built its history.
It's the never-ending dilemma of the artist, It's like, what actual good are we doing? I don't know, but I do know that audiences have been very receptive and kind of needing this sort of message right now. The more we see ourselves in other people's, even though we've been told we're very different, the more we can actually do something,
The American Railroad project allows viewers to pay tribute to those underappreciated groups without which the U.S. would have hardly become what it is now, says Giddens. For Nina Vishneva in New York, Anna Rice, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.